All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Tom.
I'm Deflating Atheism. And we have a third guy here.
Yes. Johan, you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. So,
This was
basically...
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This is basically my idea. I wanted to do a podcast sort of discussing the Messianic Manic's views on abortion. So some of his weird comments on there and so on.
Right. And I myself agree to that completely. I understand that all of us, we tried to get this podcast started. We all saw what Messianic Manic made with these abortion videos. I personally, I was not always, I'm now a theist because I've been researching, actually doing some actual science and researching into all this here. Basically, I wanted to join on to John's podcast because I thought that maybe I can make a difference in this. But what happened, Johan? You couldn't make the podcast, and Escaping Atheism, was he busy?
I guess.
Right, then so I took it up the opportunity to do the podcast, and yeah. Oh, do we have a fourth comer?
That's Trevor.
Yeah, this is Trevor. Yeah.
Trevor, welcome, Trevor.
Hey guys, yeah, I'm just trying to set my stuff up properly. Yeah, I'm on my phone actually. I'm friends with Johanan.
Great, Trevor. Welcome to the group. The more the merrier.
Hey, Trevor.
What's up?
All right, this is my.
Who is who is everyone here? I'm not sure what channel we're on. Like that.
We're on my channel. You see, we were trying to get to Escaping Atheism to do a podcast with us, but he was busy, from what I heard from John. And so I just decided, what the hell, I'll just make a channel myself, and here we are. This is on my channel called Tom Hafner, my name. It's not actually my real name. Hafner's my last name, but Tom, I just changed that personally.
Oh.
Yeah. But besides the point, I'm glad you came on here, Trevor. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, like who you are?
Oh, well, I graduated from University of Chicago about 2 years ago, so I'm about 23 years old. And right now I just code websites, and I also we're working with this startup that has like, I'm actually a co-founder. We have a small NSF mini grant of like $2.5K, and we're about to go for the bigger grant of like $50K. And so like, yeah, I just ran into Johanan like a few years back. Turned out he actually grew up in my hometown. But I actually ran into him after watching his material, and he sort of got me back into philosophy because I wasn't really thinking about it that much while I was in college. I saw his videos while I was in school, actually. And he sort of convinced me to, like, his stuff actually convinced me to go from, like, this sort of materialistic Platonism that I had sort of formulated on my own into sort of like a Neoplatonic idealism. Just based on like looking at like what his stuff was and sort of like evaluating like, you know, scientific evidence and things I had seen earlier in my physics classes and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's been a ride since then, like just running into a whole bunch of different people and you know, talking to different sorts of people who have various theses, putting forward evidence from physics papers mostly for and against various theses and that sort of thing. You know, with the whole realism versus non-realism debate within quantum mechanics, and then how that ties into your general ontology and philosophy of mind debates between things like idealism and psychism on the one hand and substance dualism and materialism on the other. So yeah, it's just been rather interesting.
Yeah. By the way, I'm afraid Johanan might have nodded off on us here.
No, I'm here.
Oh no!
Okay.
I heard him.
I was just listening.
Oh yeah.
It's not a party without you, John. Well, Trevor, yeah, the whole idea of materialism versus idealism, I came to that after I watched a channel called, you ever heard of Inspiring Philosophy?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah, now, after watching his videos, I thought that they made a few good points, and I actually started asking him questions on his discussion page, and he, in a way, convinced me. I was a bit skeptical, but I thought, back then I wasn't an agnostic. I wasn't exactly an atheist, because at one point I was thinking about becoming one, because I had so many questions, and a lot of this didn't make any sense, but I couldn't accept atheism because, well, for other reasons I'll tell later on. It just didn't make any sense at that time. So I was kind of in between the black and white. I was sort of a gray mixed. But I even watched a few atheist videos, and I thought they actually might have a good point. I even been talking with some atheists. I've gone discussions with Essence of Thoughts, Anti-Citizen X, and a few others. I've been in contact with R&R, been trying to get in contact with a few other people, but main point is that when I started communicating with Messianic Manic, I thought he was a
So
guy.
Tom, you said you've been
Boy,
in
was I
contact with Aaron
wrong.
Ra. Did you still in
What?
contact with Aaron, you still in contact with Aaron Ra?
I messaged him. I don't think he ever replied to me. I know
I
I
would like
haven't.
to debate him sometime.
He's
Oh.
actually on reasonable faith debunks, so you might be able to catch him there.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, it would be interesting, but when with all these are atheists, I decided that I should just put this podcast out right now. Right now with since Essence, no, not Essence, sorry, Escaping Atheism. I wanted to try to get in contact with him and thought we'd just do this podcast really quick. Because after I met Inspired Philosophy, I went to Johanan, and then Johanan thought of making just a response, and I thought, what kind of response? And he thought, well, what if it was just be you and me? And I thought, could we add more people like a podcast? And he thought, yes, let's do a podcast. And this is how we came to conclude with it. Too bad Escaping Atheism, he was too busy. Like Deflating Atheism, he was too busy. Was he? That's what I'm guessing, right?
Yeah. Well, no, he was going to do a hangout on Sunday. I have no idea what he's doing tonight, but yeah, he was not available on Sunday. Right.
Well, he can come whenever he wants to. The more the merrier, I say. So basically, from what I understand, I put this together. Johanna, do you want to do? I got the videos right here. The videos on abortion, the Messianic Manic made, right? Yeah. All right, then. I watched those as well too back then, but when I found Inspired Philosophy's video on abortion, I actually thought he might have a few good points. And there was a time where Messianic Manic, I was trying to get in contact with him. He wouldn't respond back to me, so I thought I'd just telling him that I'm just a theist now. Sorry about that, because I actually thought I had a connection with him back then. I actually thought he was a really smart guy, and boy, was I wrong. Like, holy shit, what the hell was I thinking? I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I want to respect this guy as much as I can. I really do. It's just that when I watched his abortion videos again, it was like I was opening my eyes. I saw it and I was like, wow, this is really, really, really bad. Just.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly done my responses, and I'll eventually get around to doing another response to TMM on some of his atheism videos. But yeah, he'll pull some stuff out of his back pocket that's just astoundingly stupid, and his little peanut gallery will just commend him all the same.
Oh yeah, it's so ridiculous. It's like I mean, you look at some of these videos are just stupid, and the ridiculous thing about it is, I mean, sometimes it's hilarious. Like there's literally, you'll get like hundreds of likes before it even gets a thumb down. And it's literally like these people are robotic. Like there's this hordes of robotic people.
Who do you think is watching this? Honestly, do you think that the people who are watching these things are people who really engage with any of these topics on a serious level? Do you think that many of them have even basic formal training in things like logic or epistemology? No, of course not. Like a lot of these people are, maybe they attended a little bit of college, maybe they're still in middle school or high school or something. These are your fedora atheists who.
And what I find to be so funny is that so many of them think they're so smart, except that, like, I mean, when the whole atheism thing started out, you'd have some smart atheists.
Yeah.
But now it looks like literally there are like numbnuts kids out there. and
well, I mean,
they think they're smart because they're atheists, right?
Well, that's the whole thing, is that it's become a system of providing validation for people who can't get validation any other way. So yeah, you get the dimwits who, if they're part of this community that will reassure them that they are the intellectual elite, they want to be part of that community. So now they have a perfect system for attracting dimwits,
Oh yeah, it's. I mean, you see kind of like the stupid comments. It's just.
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, I mean, like, it's not even just that. I mean, like, if you've seen Messianic Manic stuff, it's like, I remember this one video. He went to explain basically what he called his version of neutral monism, and it was basically just physicalism rehashed, and just slapping on the term neutral monism as though it were cool. Like, he literally said that he didn't think that there was anything else aside from the physical to say that something is physical is to say it exists. It was tautological that it is physical, and then he didn't think that there was really anything intrinsic, that there was really anything mental, and he thought that mental was just like a name of like arrangements of the physical or something like that. And so
we're getting away from
really reductive physicalism. It was
Yes.
really reductive physicalism. Yet he called it neutral monism, and he got a lot of likes for it.
Yeah, well,
Right.
we're getting away from the topic of abortion, but in my responses to him, he actually said that he does not believe in mind-independent truth. So there goes logic. There goes any possibility of argumentation. He doesn't believe in mind-independent truth. And everyone, all the bad boys were like, "All right, you wrecked deflating atheism." It was
all right, yeah, dude, just straight up go to Rida on us, man. That's it.
By the way, Trevor, can you get a little closer to your microphone?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so we can hear you better. By the way,
okay.
I was wondering, is it pronounced? I heard people told me his name is pronounced differently, but I could be wrong. I've been calling him Messianic Manic,
Derrida
but
or Derrida. I've heard both, really. I'm
Like-
not sure if it's Derrida or Derrida.
I heard like some people call him Messianic Maniac, and I was thinking that would suit him.
It's just manic. It's just manic.
It's
Messianic
manic,
manic,
yeah.
but
Right,
Maniac is like his nickname because he is a maniac. So
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what I was leading to. He should go with that. He is literally a maniac, and after we get done with his abortion videos, let's get started, shall we?
Let's talk about abortion. Yeah.
All right, yeah. Bring up the screenshot with the abortion thing.
Okay, then, got it right here.
Okay, so I made this comment, right, where I said he was complaining that forcing someone to give birth to a baby was cruel and unusual punishment. And I was kind of angry about this. I'm like, well, but that's what they deserve. Like they're going to kill a baby, chop a baby apart. That's what they deserve, And it's like, well, what about the Eighth Amendment? That they, then I made this comment that's kind of like, smart alecky and kind of like authoritarian just to throw a bomb in there, basically. I said, well, the founders made it. They have some quotes making it very clear that, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, they only apply to, or they only work for a moral people. When the people are they become less moral, then you need a more authoritarian form of government to control them and so on. Of course, this is going to irritate the heck out of him because he's a moral relativist. But
yeah,
but
and
then
we're assured life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Okay.
We're not guaranteed a pain-free existence.
But the point is he then became like he brought attention to this in his video. He became all appalled about. And Johanan thinks that authoritarianism and cruel and unusual punishment are okay. That's the value set he's coming from, right? I'm like, I'm trying to like just irritate them, and he reacts like this, right? But the point is Go back to that screenshot you showed me because this is
Okay,
very
yeah,
interesting.
I just want to pause and look at the title. It says is a fetus human, and that's just that's an unscientific sort of thing if you're trying to question that whether or not a fetus is a human being.
That's every medical
human.
textbook ever
Even if you were
has said
talking
that.
about a skin cell,
This right here, yeah.
human would be human. So this is a stupid question to begin with.
All right, go back to the screenshot though.
All right.
Show me what he said.
Okay, then this right here, he.
Okay,
Yeah.
my position isn't based on argument at all. It's based on my conscience. The whole point I'm making is it
So my
wait a minute, hold on, go back.
Here, listen. I'm not that good at reading, but I'll try my best. My position isn't based on an argument at all. It's based on my consciousness. The whole point I'm making in this video is that my position is one that I cannot help but hold. I'm not saying that that makes it right. I'm saying that it will be the position I hold regardless of whatever it is or it is not right.
Wait, hold on. Didn't you? There was another one you had about how he said that even.
Oh yes, I'll get to that.
That's the one I'm looking for.
comments.
That's the one I'm looking for.
Right.
Not
I
this
found
one
these
yet.
comments right here, but I want to go over this, like how messed up this is. So even if it's not right, he won't change his position. Just wow.
Yeah.
Just,
He's saying that openly. So you.
yeah, that's the thing, you know.
Because he doesn't believe in
saying this
objective
openly.
morality. He has a video saying he doesn't actually believe in objective morality. So of course
well,
he's
I
not
mean-
going to believe him.
Oh, so
Go back to that comment though. Okay,
Okay.
now this is interesting here. Okay, hypothetically, what if there was some freak discovery tomorrow that proved to us the fetuses are perfectly aware of all the pain and abortions cause them incredible suffering? That's not even a freak discovery. That's actually like science. I mean, they
Yeah, I mean, science
that
shows
they
us that. I
have
looked this up myself.
the
Yeah.
capacity to I forget what the link was, but like by 12 weeks they're able to like sense pain. You know, that's just the end of the first trimester, at least. And so now. That wouldn't change my position. I'd still rather be one of those fetuses rather than someone forced to give birth. Now, in this context, he's in the video. He was talking about the sort of Rawlsian, original position where you put yourself into this position. Like it's like basically you put everyone involved into a blind situation where they have to pick out of a hat of what person they might end up being. Right? A baby that's going to get aborted, a mother, et cetera, that needs to abort, et cetera. And so everyone has an equal chance of being aborted or aborting, right? And ironically, when this same exact thing came up in political philosophy class way back, I was like, I think most people would think that if there was a chance they'd be aborted, to say we had this weird situation where anyone could be aborted, right? Like what was the name of that movie? The one that just came out, not just came out, like last year it came out on the whole, The Purge.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Purge.
Like so imagine we had a society where there was The Purge and anyone had a chance of being quote unquote aborted, right? No one would be for abortion. If something like The Purge was legal and there was one day a year where anyone could go out and kill anyone else and it would be perfectly legal, no one would be for that because they'd all have a chance of getting killed, And
Right,
what's ironic is it's just obvious. I mean, like, who in their right mind would value the ability to get an abortion versus the possibility of being aborted? Like, over that. Like, no one. But he apparently takes basically, it just boils down to a random. Kind of, he's telling the truth here back there, but he boils down to a random, choice on his part to adopt abortion. It's not an argument. It's a sentiment,
It's his
basically.
own opinion, basically.
It's his own opinion, and there's not even an
just-
argument behind his opinion. It's
just
a
what
sentiment.
he wants, basically. He just feels this way, therefore this is how he's going to behave.
Okay, go back to
And I
the
guess,
thing though.
I'll
But now,
say, well, the thing is, I'll actually laud him on this part because this is actually consistent. This is like the most consistent I've actually seen him with his sort of philosophical positions. That he's really standing by his sort of version of either relativism or subjectivism, where he's just like, well, I just hold my disposition, and that's my disposition. I don't care either way. I'm just gonna stick by it. I can sort of respect that coming out of him, but then once he starts trying to go to these sorts of scientific arguments or whatnot, and just basically denying science, then that's that's uncalled for.
Yeah, he's basically acting like a fundamentalist right now. I mean, that's the one thing I found with atheists and fundamentalists. They have a lot in common. They both reject science.
Now, okay. Here's the other thing, though. The other thing I wanted to point out here is, remember what he said about complaining that he balking at my attempt to lob a Molotov cocktail in the discussion session and be like, well, they deserve to live in an authoritarian society where they can be cruelly, unusually punished, type of thing, He's in favor of cruel and unusual punishment here. He's saying so explicitly. Like, hypothetically, what if there was some freak discovery? It was not even a freak discovery. That's just science. Go back.
It's right here. I got right here. I'll read it myself. All right. Let's see here. Is it right here? Oh wait, maybe this is just. Let's go back up really quick.
Okay, go.
Here it is.
Go back down. Okay, that one too. Okay, well, both of them. We stop there, but then go down after.
I'll read this really quick. He's saying, hypothetically, what if there was some freak discovery tomorrow that proved to us that fetuses are perfectly aware of all pain and abortions cause them incredible suffering? And his response was, that wouldn't change my position. I would still rather be one of those fetuses than be someone forced to give birth. Yeah, I bet he's saying that.
He's just saying that outright. He's saying,
I think he's probably just
was proven to be cruel and unusual punishment, I would still be in favor of it.
Well, I think he's literally just biting the bullet.
So I know, but the point is that that's straight up hypocritical. Like, he's complaining if he's gonna bite the bullet like that, he should not then go around and complain about me being for cruel and unusual punishment.
That's inconsistent, but you have to remember he's a relativist, and so like he doesn't think that there's an actual morality out there. So it's perfectly fine for him under his ethical system to just
pick stuff at random. Well, there's a problem with that, and it's kind of ironic because he said this one video on moral objectivism and authoritarianism. And while it is true that you can have authoritarianism under either system, whether it be relativism or, you can have a perfectly valid basis for authoritarianism on subjective morality. When you go beyond good and evil, and you realize that there are some people that are fitting to be ruled, those with slave morality, and then there's the Ubermensch on top. I can point to him right now, a perfectly moral, it's a total moral relativist, okay, who believes that there should be.
I think you mean moral nihilist in this case.
Yeah. Yeah, what's he going to say when Emperor Palpatine says, good is a point of view, Anakin?
Yeah.
Like, he has no defense against this at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's just steamrolled. It's what's the point? Like, it's
only by...
He has no reason. He literally destroyed any of his basis for objecting to anything.
Yeah.
And he's hypocritical when it comes to, he is saying if abortion was found to be cruel and unusual punishment, he would be for it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's and isn't that his point where he believes in subjective morality? Basically, if a group of people, don't think it's wrong, it's not wrong. I mean, what would happen if everyone decided murder isn't wrong? What would happen?
Or what's wrong with shutting down the democracy? If I don't like the democracy and it's my relative point of view to abort the democracy, who are they to impose their morality on me?
Yeah.
Why can't I abort the democracy?
Yeah, it feels like it's based on his opinion and not on like actual reason, and virtues. That.
Well, the thing is, this actually gets into politics, especially leftist politics, identity politics, with Foucault. So like Foucault sort of like, he didn't want to classify himself as like a postmodernist or a post-structuralist, but that's where a lot of scholars classify him. He was heavily influenced by Nietzsche, but Foucault's position was more or less that there isn't really an objective morality or anything, but there are these cultural groups that have their opinions and their positions, and they can be subject to sort of being oppressed or harmed by another group.
Yeah.
And so his idea was sort of like maybe instead of like trying to go use these sorts of ideas of abstract ideals of ethics or virtues or whatnot. Instead of all of that, let's try to figure out for a specific group what benefits us as a group, and try to just implement that into policy. And so that's where you really get your leftist identity politics from. And a lot of feminists have actually been, heavily inspired by that. And I suppose that also, that feeds into an extent into like this whole idea of, well, abortion's fine because, it's the woman's body, it's her choice, all of that stuff.
Couldn't you use that identity politics on behalf of
defend this abortion because for us feminists or us women who are not thinking, who do not want to start families or anything like that, or
that whole sort of Marxian style thinking, though? The kind of Marxian style thinking can be used anyhow.
Anyway, there's no
coherent
justification for that kind of subjective morality.
Yeah,
right.
Any which way you look at it.
What I'm getting at though is if you're gonna try and argue for the protection of the little guy, like a kind of moral relativism where it's where the underdog is always the one that is
Well, yeah, that's inconsistent. There's no sort
supported. Well, who's the biggest underdog in that case except the baby? I mean,
right, and also Masonic Manic
really oppressing whom there?
Like, the baby can't have a voice because the baby doesn't have enough power to say anything.
It's very clear the mother is the oppressor in that case,
Yes.
I know. And here's something else he says right here. I'll read this. So regardless of how much suffering or awareness of it the fetus had, your conscience would still say it was worse for the woman to give birth. And his response was, I would rather experience the short-term suffering of the fetus than the
permanent suffering of the person forced to give birth.
Yeah.
How is it permanent suffering?
Permanent suffering for the person forced to give birth, even if the suffering of the fetus was more intense.
So in other words,
permanent suffering.
That raising a child is so bad, such a negative thing. Yeah.
And you can even use adoption for crying out loud. I mean, seriously?
This is what I was trying to say before, is what a dismal, cynical, miserable view of biology, of motherhood, of childbirth, of human biology these people have. And the great irony of it all is that it seems to be materialists who have the most cynical view of our own bodies. It seems to be that people who affirm the existence of a creator or something have a much more sanguine understanding of the mind's relation to the body. In their view, it seems that the body is almost the enemy of the mind, that we are prisoners of our own biology, and that even mere childbirth is like hellish punishment. Now, you talk about Joe Blow. Go down to the lady pushing a baby stroller at the end of your street. Tell her about this viewpoint, that motherhood is punishment. It's a hellish punishment. Tell me what she'll say to you,
Right. Well, I think what Mr. Mac is saying that he's calling it punishment because if the woman doesn't want to, like if it's a mother who wants a child, that's one thing.
Well, then give the baby for adoption.
Well, that's true.
I mean, they might say that it's going to be psychologically bad because you think about, people say about how give the baby for adoption that, you're thinking like, oh, I'm a terrible mother. I abandoned my child to the world, etc. But the thing of it is, I mean, what's worse? Like, what would be weighing more in your conscience of, I abandoned my child to the world to a possibly a good family that's going to like love them and care for them, or I murdered my child in a brutal Texas Chainsaw Massacre sort of way.
There are lots of women out there who, get abortions and then they just don't feel anything. And I've read blogs about this, blog posts about this. A lot of women today, they don't really care about it. So it's like they kill their baby and they're just like, eh. And sometimes they expected that they would, feel something. And then they may even feel guilt about not feeling guilt. Ironically, they might be like, well, dang, I must be a psychopath or something. And, to be honest, I think that's really sort of what it is. That, when you're like that, you just kill your own child, and you don't feel any remorse. That is psychopathic.
I would suggest. You said nowadays. I would suggest that's less so the case these days than it might have been in times past. now that we have all this ultrasound technology, and even just the phrase unborn child has become part of the common parlance, and we talk about carrying.
Well, it was a part of the common parlance before the term fetus ever became predominant.
But more so nowadays. Would you not agree?
Probably, yeah. I mean, it's with ultrasounds and
Yeah.
MRIs
Well, I mean,
and so
it's
on.
like even I mean, like like the whole thing for the ultrasound is they're supposed to watch the ultrasound and then realize that it's their baby, and feel something for the baby, and then with that empathy, maybe just maybe with the little bit of conscience in their heart, they won't kill their own child. But what we see is there are a lot of women who just aren't affected by that. There are a lot of women who will see the dismembered body parts of their baby, and they just won't feel anything. They just see it and they're just like, oh well, it's whatever. And that's the part of the culture that we're in now. I remember Dr. David Bentley Hart, Orthodox theologian, he's professor somewhere, I'm not sure where exactly, mentioned that there was actually a little while back, there was actually a case where there were, I believe it was 3 college-age men, and one of them just wanted to kill himself, and the others 2 were there, and they just let him do it, and they were like, well, that's his choice. Like our friend wants to kill himself, and if he wants it, then that's fine. Just let him do it, and that's
No, that's terrible. I mean, that's why there's like a suicide hotline you're supposed to call if you're going to risk killing yourself. I mean, killing yourself is a terrible thing to do. I mean, that's just wow.
Yeah, it's more of our condition of modernity as being nihilistic, in a sense, just people not realizing that there is a good life to live at all, not knowing what that not even knowing what that means. And often within I'd say even in Christian circles, honestly, a lot of people don't know what good means, so they might think that good just means whatever the heck God wants them to do, and so they'll really go in and approach the Bible that way, and very often they might end up interpreting things in a way that is less generous, not exactly what the way it was originally interpreted or whatever, and they'll go in brashly, and they won't listen to their conscience or anything like that, and then they can end up doing bad things. That's how you get extremists within the religious side, who would say, for example, like those sort of like gay conversion camps that aren't voluntary, the ones that are actually forced, because
Right. Okay. I
show up. Yeah, like
right.
you get sort of child abuse cases. You get child abuse cases and whatnot over there.
I understand completely.
It's people.
I'm sorry, I'm not.
It's people taking this idea. They don't really know what good means, so they think that good means whatever it seems that God's telling them is it. So, hey, I'm trying to get these gay people to stop being gay. So, if I have to abuse them, then that's good. But, what ends up happening is the other faculties that we have, our reason, our empathy, all that gets ignored, and they end up doing these terrible things.
Yeah.
And honestly, the
right.
vibe behind it is good. That's they're trying to help people reorient themselves, but people don't want to be reoriented. That's already a problem on the other person's end. But the thing is, because they don't understand what it means to be a good person to begin with, what it means to live the good life, sort of like that human fulfillment sort of aspect of the good.
Yeah, they think that good is merely like an arbitrary edict of God rather than an expression of God's nature.
Yeah, they think good and evil are like concepts. They're not physical. You can't actually touch them.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
Anyways, let's
Well, that's
let-
part of another
this
thing.
comment
The
here.
whole notion of good, like, I kind of understand why that would happen, and it
Okay.
comes from a metaphysical misunderstanding of the nature of God. And I mean, it's kind of ironic because I mean, some of you guys have known that I've kind of been struggling with an issue for the past year or so, where I've got this idea that God is like, and it's not like, I mean, mentally, philosophically, I can derive an argument for God is good, right? And you see me do it, my Privation Boney video, but I've had this problem on and off where I've, questioned, was God really mean good in the sense that I mean good? And like, is he really like this sort of Lovecraftian alien trying to, put this stuff on us,
And
I end up blowing up at God and getting angry and all that and so on. And it's actually kind of funny because everyone's like sees me as this big Christian apologist, and yet, in my private life, I get mad at God.
Yeah, sort of misotheism.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, guys. I don't mean to be rude, but I think
let's get back to the video.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I wanted to make this quick comment though, that if people understood why God is good in a philosophic sense, it gets rid of this sort of boneheaded divine command thing where it's just like, God said X, therefore it is, what, even if it's like some horrible thing, instead of like, no, it doesn't. Like, the reason God is good is God contains everything, and God's mind contains everything else, okay? So God's mind contains all the value sets, right? So therefore, if we have value sets, that means that they have to have originated from God's sense of value. And
okay,
so
I understand you.
everyone's values can only ever be, if there is some value set that's quote unquote opposed to God, it's not really that it's opposed to God, it's just that it's valuing the right thing in the wrong order. It's distorted.
Right,
Sort of
I studied that before.
yeah.
Universally intersubjective point of view that God has. And so if everyone could have God's frame of reference on value, everyone would agree with it because it would just so happen to coincide with agreeing with their senses of value.
Right. And anyways, I don't want to make this podcast too long.
Okay.
But we can talk about that another day, though. If we have like a podcast on quantum mechanics, we'll definitely talk about that. But
or you can just say, well, there's more idealist philosophy there, but like you can.
Yeah. Now, not to be rude, I'm just want to go on. I'll read this last comment here. And now, what was said to Messianic Manic? That you're honestly saying that you would rather be the woman who inflicts incredible suffering than a woman who gives birth. And not only would I prefer to be the woman who inflicts the suffering, I would rather be the fetus who's exposing that suffering than be the woman, experiencing that suffering than be the woman who is forcing to give birth. And, he's just saying that because there's no way for him to go back to being a fetus. If there was a way, I'm sure he wouldn't be saying that.
I mean, yeah. Okay, here, give him an example. Okay, I know exactly. Go back to that screenshot. I know exactly how to smoke him out on that.
Okay, yeah. Here it is, right here. Okay, as long as you guys don't talk,
Let's pretend that I was Emperor of America. Okay, or Donald Trump he's the quote unquote a God emperor, right? Yeah, and he wants to punish women for abortion. Okay,
but isn't he against abortion?
What?
But isn't he against abortion?
Yeah, he says he wants to punish women for abortion. Trump does.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah. That totally kind of ticked off people when I put that in my video. But anyway, so let's suppose that Donald Trump he was gonna get rid of abortion, but he had one condition. Okay, he had like a way to possibly give the pro-choice people what they want. Okay. And his condition was he called the Messianic Manic up on the phone and says, would you be willing to come over here and be I will keep abortion legal under the condition that you come to the White House and be dismembered live. We have someone with a chainsaw and they're going to cut you apart, and kill you with a chainsaw. Okay. Just like you do an abortion, right? Okay. And if you do that, then I will keep abortion legal.
Yeah, I don't think he'll do that.
I don't think he's going to do that in a heartbeat. So let's put him right back in the situation where he can get quote unquote aborted in the same way that a fetal child would get aborted. Okay,
right.
He's not going to go for that in a heartbeat. He's going to run away from that. I mean, and it's obvious why. The only reason here is exactly what you said is, he doesn't have to go back to being a fetus. So therefore, he doesn't have to be aborted.
Yeah, basically everything he's saying right now, even if it's wrong, I still can't change my position. He's basically saying even if it caused suffering and pain, I still would go with it. He's basically admitting murder right now.
So
And
now
I'm
the
surprised
question I have is, if this is the case, okay,
Yeah.
and he doesn't actually have like logical reasons, right? I mean, I'm going to presume he's not here, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm going to presume if Trump gave him that ultimatum, there's no way on earth he was going to do that, right?
No.
Okay, so obviously
he would say it would be a violation of his human rights because he's no
Oh,
longer.
it would be, but the point is, well, if it's a violation of his human rights, then why wouldn't it be a violation of the fetal child's human rights?
Yeah, I know, and we're going to
So
go over that.
The point is here is that his logic does not make sense, even from within its own framework.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
so that means that he must have some psychological motivators for being for abortion.
Yeah, he just wants to do whatever he wants, like every damn atheist.
What would those psychological motivators be? Well, he's not a woman, though, so why would he need
a woman.
to?
So I'm thinking the psychological motivator here is that he'd rather be free from having, potential mess ups with a one night stand.
Oh, that's what's going on.
Yeah, I've noticed this with atheists. Like, they argue there is no morality, there's no free will. Most of them say that. I'm thinking it's basically they're arguing for no responsibility. That's what has to lead.
What he's doing here, probably doing, okay? We're not going to say he's doing this for certain, but this is probably what he's doing, is he's thinking with his penis, okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, I don't want to say he's thinking that. It's just, I think that he probably wants this because he wants everyone to be free. Because I noticed a lot of atheists online. Most of them want to argue that there's no free will. They'll argue that there's no morality, subjective morality. It leads me to believe that it's because they don't want to be responsible on some stuff. They want everything to be free.
What if I were to go full Nietzsche on my channel and say that we should have a right-wing dictatorship and outlaw abortion and et cetera, and throw the people who don't like it out of helicopters and so on.
Oh, you mean
and on the grounds that morality is relative, and so therefore I can do whatever I want.
Johanan,
mm-hmm.
you do not support dictatorship, but you support the right to choose dictatorship.
Yes, that's much better.
Yeah, that's true.
I actually have a meme. I have a meme. This is going to sound hilarious, guys. I have this meme from like way back. This is when Bush was in office, and there's this bunch of American flags in the back, and Bush is there, and he's got his hand. He's waving, but the angle of the camera makes it look like he's doing a Sieg Heil. And the title, it was one of those demotivators, and it said "Unitary Executive Theory," and then the caption was "Pro-choice. It's the decider's right to choose. Who are you to impose your morality on him?"
By the way,
that's awesome.
The pro-choice ethos was nowhere in evidence after the election of Trump. These people did not support the choice to elect Trump president.
No, they didn't.
You notice that? I don't support Trump's presidency, but I support the choice to elect Trump. But no, they did not take that option.
Right.
Yeah, what's funny is many of these alt-right people, like Ubermensch atheist, right? He's like an atheist, and he's like the Schopenhauerian version of like an idealistic atheist, which is a very rarefied form of atheism. But we kind of press him, he'll say he's a pantheist. But what?
Well, like Nietzsche himself was actually part of the German idealist movement.
Right. So the thing about this is, though, is he's like this big atheist. He's actually in favor of right-wing authoritarianism. He's part of the alt-right. He loves the notion of throwing leftists out of helicopters and so on.
Right.
Now, what's funny about this is people like him represent a portion of the alt-right right now. There are people who are full Nietzscheans. They have like these Nietzschean philosophies. Like, it's kind of unusual to see it. In a way, it kind of makes sense with the kind of the Marxist social justice thing as the opposite. If you think of the Marxists as having the slave morality, and then there's the Nietzscheans having the master morality, then opposing the Marxism kind of makes you quote unquote right wing. But what's weird is because if you're Nietzschean, you would naturally oppose Marxism and for that matter social justice warrior garbage, because you're going from this sort of Nietzschean master morality perspective. You're the Ubermensch. You get to enforce your morality on everyone.
Right.
And so the thing about this is it's kind of hilarious because it's like the chickens are coming home to roost. They've been arguing for this.
Oh yeah, they've been arguing for this nihilism for a long time in order
And now
to
it's come back to bite
themselves.
them. And now they're actually nihilists voting for Trump because they want to dangle leftists out of helicopters and so on because morality is relative and that's their
Okay. All right. I think we get the basic idea of what's going on. Is it all right if we move on to the videos Messianic Mac made?
Yeah, sure.
That's excellent.
All right, then. All right, so let's start right now. If any of you have anything to say, just let me know. All right.
All right.
Okay. Now, when I play the video, all right, none of you, all of you, when you have something to say, I will know immediately when you start speaking. All right.
All right.
So here we go.
Inspiring philosophy fanboys love spamming me with IP videos, presumably because they want a response, so I guess I'll oblige. In the next few videos, I'll look at the video he did on why he thinks science shows abortion to be immoral. Also, Venaloid uploaded his response to this video just before I finished mine, so check his out as well. I'll put a link in the description.
This is an attack on the pro-choice or pro-abortion crowd. The people who think it's okay for any woman to have an abortion just because they want to.
I don't know who has an abortion just because they want to have an abortion. I've never heard of anyone wanting to have an abortion per se. Women who choose to have abortions usually have them because they don't want to be pregnant and or don't want to endure going through labor or a cesarean.
That abortion is not murder.
Okay, this is what I'm talking about. That's basically what IP's meaning. Okay, people want to have abortion because they don't want to have a child, basically, not because they just want abortion per se. This is the kind of thing I realized with Messianic Mac.
Well, there is Lena Dunham who actually did say that she wants an abortion just to have one.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. IP was trying to say that I've talked to IP before.
By the way, is someone who needs to swing from a helicopter. So.
Okay. It's just crazy with me thinking this. This is what Messianic Mac does. He'll cherry pick what he says and run wild with it. That's what he always does. But let's get on with it.
Of an abortion is perfectly fine, doesn't harm anyone. This is one of the most unscientific beliefs out there today.
It's unscientific because science does not and cannot demonstrate the moral significance or value of anything. How does one scientifically prove that killing anything is immoral? Science can show that a zygote is human, but how could it demonstrate that killing a human is immoral? The idea that killing a human being is wrong is not scientific. How would you empirically demonstrate the truth of such an idea?
Which is what
Okay.
So yeah. Okay, you go first. Yeah.
Give him some points here. Give him some points.
No. You go ahead and go first. I'll catch later. Go ahead.
Okay, so the thing I was gonna say is that this is like your classic Hume's guillotine is a separation gap sort of thing, right? And the thing here is like it's presented as, well, you cannot derive value from a state of affairs, and therefore you can't say that anything is wrong based on science, right? And the thing here is that this is actually, and I don't have the resources to address this full out and say exactly how and why abortion is wrong or what situations it is or anything like that, based on the actual metaphysics or whatever that you need to have in order to have a moral ontology. But basically, this is essentially just a product of modernity, namely in the removal of final causality. If you can think back to Aristotle's 4 forms of causality from reality. So basically, what do I mean by this? I mean that when you got to around Descartes, Descartes removed the idea that things had a goal towards which they tended. And what that basically did was 2 things. The first thing was, it's sort of obvious, was that it actually distanced there from being any sort of rational reason why things would behave in a certain way. And so you couldn't use a priori reasoning to figure out anything about the natural world using that sort of framework, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, it's fine. the thing that's more important, though, was that this actually also subtly destroyed any sort of notion of the natural world having purpose. What do I mean by this? Well, if things have finality, then that means that they tend towards things. That means that, in a sense, those things, like such as yourself and myself, they do things for reasons. In other words, it's like I reach out to grab an apple because I want to eat the apple, right? And the idea is that if I'm doing things for reasons, and if I am such that I am always doing things for reasons, then there is, rationally speaking, and this is the key point, this is purely rationally a best way for me to do things in order to accomplish those reasons. In other words, there's a good for me that is I behave in this particular pattern, and what I intrinsically want, I get. And the thing is, I don't determine this, because what ends up happening is the stuff that creates me, the way that my body is made, formed in the womb and all of that stuff, my DNA, all of that determines my aims, determines my motivations. I have no control over that. That's objective. Those are objective. And therefore, the rules that I can derive as being, these are the things that benefit me the most, these are the things that are good, are objective. Yeah. And so in that sense, you'd get an objective morality. And with that, you'd be able to say that based on human nature, then there would be certain patterns of behavior that would contradict your human nature, that would mess up your goals, and therefore those would be bad actions. And then you'd say that, you know, if it were the case that abortion is immoral, which I think it is, but I don't know the exact argument that is used to show that, then what you do is you basically point out what it is that abortion does, and then how that ends up destroying and subverting your faculties, and thus destroying the intrinsic goal towards which you are oriented, thus harming you. And so the thing is that he just brings up this is odd thing of, you know, you can't you can't show that something is morally wrong based on science, and just blurts it out as though it's fact.
Yeah.
When really it's actually just the result of a certain philosophical paradigm that he's operating on, where he's already assumed a naturalist view of the world, where you can't have purposes or anything that you're going towards.
This is my view, is that it's not necessary for us to demonstrate that abortion is immoral to furnish a philosophical argument. I think it's sufficient to point out that nobody consistently lives under the kind of moral framework of the pro-choice movement. No one consistently lives under those principles. We all make an exception for abortion.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's just that IP was saying that everyone claims that abortion is not murder and doesn't cause harm to anyone. I mean, there are scientific claims of saying that what constitutes is something that's killing innocent life and something killing it's not. And IP didn't mention anything about immorality or morality right here. He's trying to say that science makes a claim right here. I feel that it was just what Messianic Man just said was just a waste of time. Basically, what he just said. It's
well, he was sort of what I saw him doing was basically focusing on the ethical aspect instead of focusing on the fact that someone's getting hurt there. So if you noticed, that the main thing that IP was trying to focus on was the fact that someone is getting killed. You know, it's someone getting killed, and you know, Manic just didn't really cover that. He just sort of was like, well, the idea that you know, it's morally wrong to do that, science can show that it's morally wrong to do abortion or something like that, is nonsense. And so, like, that's what I wanted to focus on, is that, you know, this sort of presupposition about what sorts of things that science can and cannot say. You know, that this is actually flawed, number one, and number two, it's actually, if you read a lot of atheist materialistic ethicists, a lot of them will actually say that, you know, this is false because we can derive things from like various forms of ethical naturalism. Now, I don't agree with those necessarily, because a lot of them try to rescue things from this sort of non-teleological aspect. But as long as you have this sort of teleological framework, and it is a completely fact-based framework, there is no sort of is-ought distinction there. There is no sort of gap to be bridged. My whole point was that he's touting this statement out like it's fact, a lot like the way that a lot new atheists would tout out, oh, you can't prove a negative, as though that's fact. When, we know that's false, and we know that his claim in this instance is also false.
Right. Let's continue on. That was a very good point. Let's continue on the video here.
Pro-abortion crowd doesn't address the scientific arguments from the pro-life community, and instead relies on appeals to emotion and straw man arguments. We are constantly told that the pro-life community just wants to take away a woman's right to choose and is a religiously motivated government power grab to remove the woman's right to her own body.
I don't think the pro-life community just want those things, but I do think those things form part of the motivation of at least some pro-life advocates. Some pro-life Christians, Rick Santorum for example, are also opposed to vaccines for HPV. I strongly suspect that this is because they wish to preserve the threat of unwanted pregnancy and STIs as a disincentive to have extramarital or premarital sex.
All the evidence demonstrates quite easily that human life begins at conception, not at birth. According to everything science has revealed, this is just as much of a human as this is.
Of course it is. I don't dispute that a fetus or even a zygote is human. What I dispute is the idea that a zygote is as morally significant as a self-aware entity.
We can basically say that, right there we see that he's already presupposing that fetuses and zygotes aren't self-aware entities. And
number two, that's even relevant. I mean, like a sleeping person is not a self-aware entity, and now I don't.
There are plenty of morally wrong things that don't involve self-aware entities. At least if you're coming up from this sort of like natural law aspect of things, then you'll find that it's morally wrong. What's a good example? Like, it's morally wrong to break your own property, right? Now, that sounds absurd. It might sound absurd, but the reason is that you have your property for certain goals of your own, and if you break your own property, well, you're going to hurt yourself. You're not going to be able to reach those goals as well as you'd like to. So you're really just messing yourself over.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I mean,
At least give him some points for courageousness for admitting that the fetus is at least biologically a human.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately, Hassan isn't on here. I don't know if you know Hassan Mohammed. He's he's an atheist from Australia, and he adopts, despite being an atheist, he's very pro-life, and his argument is he uses the Boethian view of personhood. Well, he'll point out that like the even like the zygote even is a person because it has the essence of like. I mean, there's rational agency is involved in being a person, yes, but that's not the only thing that makes a person a person. It's that there is a being that has an essence to be a rational being, even if that essence is not yet activated. So yes, a very early fetus or an embryo or a zygote, it may not yet be conscious, and eventually it's not intelligent until later on anyway. But the thing is the fact that it has that essence in its nature.
Very much unlike a sperm or an ovum, which of course
exactly they don't not have that essence by themselves. They're not something that in its essential nature is a rational being.
Yeah.
Now that's a fetus is in its rational. Its essence is the essence of a human being because it is a human being.
Yeah, that's very true.
Human being means it has the essence of a human being, even if all that essence is not yet fully activated in the form of rationality. Its essence is to be a rational being.
Right. That's very true. Why are we assuming it's not human, even though it has human DNA?
That's not a religious argument by any stretch. I mean, the very fact that Hassan is an atheist demonstrates that is not not a religious argument. It's a very rational argument. It's not a religious argument. It's nothing religious about that at all. It's
Right. Let's continue on here.
The rights we regard as owed to a person are distinct things. I see a person as any entity capable of understanding its own existence. Not all humans can do this, and it may be the case that not all beings that can do this are human. I consider murder to be the non-consensual ending of the life for reasons other than defense of an innocent entity which is, or at some point has been, aware of itself. Since a zygote has no such awareness, killing a zygote is not murder.
There's not
Okay, this is...
Yeah, he has qualifications to his qualifications there.
Yeah, I know.
You left him a lot of wiggle room.
What about people that are like in vegetation states or in a coma?
Well, no, because
you
he
know?
said if they have been in the past aware.
I think he would
So
say
he
that
made
it's not murder exactly. Then, if you're talking about people in vegetative states, but that's one of those things where, I'd be hard pressed to see him, like let's say like he let's say that it was like his mom or something who was in a situation. If we just posited that to him, oh yeah, would it be fine for someone to just come up and kill your mom if she's in a coma or if she's in a vegetative state, and you don't know if she's going to come back or not or anything like that. She's obviously not self-aware. Well, he'd probably try to backpedal or give sort of qualifications to his previous qualifications to sort of save that.
Yeah.
I think you're giving him too much credit there.
All right, then let's continue on here.
paper out there that says life begins later on or at birth.
Probably not, but you will find plenty of papers which describe sperm cells as living.
Okay, here we go. Now I talked to Mike, and he's actually a biologist. Now he looked up those sources, and I did after he told me about this. It says nothing about sperm and these egg actually being considered as life, just like a virus. It's the paper do say living, but they're using that context very differently. It's not the same thing. And again, IP never said. IP was saying human life. All right, he said at the very beginning of his video right here. But notice that when Meg makes a response to this video, he doesn't mention a little clip of when IP's saying human life in there. So he's going to go to the clip that says just life and then argue from that. That's right. Yeah,
All
go
right.
on.
Yeah, let's go on.
Huh?
Oh, let's go on. Yeah, is what we were trying to say.
All right.
Actually does not begin at conception. It began several billion years ago and has been a continuous process. However, you probably just worded this very clumsily. I'm sure that what you mean is not merely that life begins at conception, but rather that human life begins at conception. Though, as I said, I don't believe murder ought to be defined merely as the killing of a member of the human species. Later in the video, IP will claim that the distinction between humans and persons is ad hoc. He seems to think that this is an arbitrary distinction, but valuing something merely because it is a member of the human species seems far more arbitrary to me. I see no reason why killing a newly fertilized zygote is any morally different from killing the two gametes that formed it. Why is a merely taxonomical difference such as this morally significant?
By the way,
that's precisely morally significant because the taxonomy determines that someone is a human, and as he pointed out with Hassan's argument, the Boethian view that depending on what species one belongs to, one has an essence associated with that species, and if that species happens to be an intelligent species, it doesn't even have to be human. It could be Vulcans or Wookiees or whatever.
Wookiees. Classic Johanan.
Right. Okay.
well, yeah. I mean, even if
they'll have an essence to be intelligent, even if they're not yet intelligent, and because they have that essence, that innate essence, then it's wrong to kill them.
Yeah,
because they are human beings. They have the properties of a person.
Go on. Go ahead, deflate atheism.
No, I was just gonna say, even if you would say something like you don't believe animals have the rights as humans, you could still say something like torturing an animal for fun is objectively wrong. You could still affirm things like that without necessarily giving them personhood.
Yeah, and then notice how Messianic Maniac basically take out context what IP was saying. Now, when IP was saying life begins at conception, what do you think kind of life he's talking about?
Well, that's a popular atheism meme. I think that came from like Carl Sagan or something, where he said, "When does life begin?" Oh, well, life began 3 million years ago. It's 3 billion years ago. Whatever.
Well, I know, but in the video, I've seen the video multiple times. IP does say human life does begin at conception, and later on at the end of the video, he's saying that life begins at conception. Repeats it again, and then Messianic just takes out context as saying, "I think you mean human life because you worded this so clumsily." It's obvious that he means human life. He mentioned that in the video. That's what they do. They take things out of context here. Yeah.
Also notice that he always frames his arguments where it seems to me, and I don't see why ... It's what I call the seems to me argument, and that's how TMM always seems to fortify his arguments. He says, "It seems to me."
Yeah. He'll also say that I can't understand it. That's my argument.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. He'll also say I don't make arguments.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
this sounds a lot like that sort of your theistic non-cognitivists who say, well, I don't know what the definition of God is or what a God's supposed to be, so therefore it doesn't make any sense to say God exists or doesn't exist. It's like, no, that just means you're retarded. But
I know. Yeah, I know. It's just so crazy. It's like, I'm not arguing. It's based on my position, based on my consciousness, because I can't accept it.
Well, who gives a damn about your conscience? Sorry for the cussing, but really,
no, it's okay.
Who cares about your particular position? We're not trying to talk about what sort of sentiment that you're holding. We're trying to talk about actual ethics here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
His fanboys do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Begins at conception. So by logic, no one is trying to attack a woman's right to her body.
Okay, you clearly don't know how logic works if you think that follows by logic. Even if life begins at conception, it would in no way follow that no one is trying to attack a woman's right to her body. It could be the case that life begins at conception, and also that at least some people are motivated to oppose abortion, not primarily by the belief that a fetus is a human life, but rather by the desire to preserve the risk of unwanted pregnancy as a deterrent to having non-monogamous sex, which would constitute an attack on bodily autonomy. However, you clearly have the writing skills of a Zamboni on Valium, so in the name of charity, I'm going to assume that what you meant to say was that it is not necessarily the case that pro-lifers are attacking a woman's right to bodily autonomy. I agree, but again, I think it's clear that at least some are.
Because
now, here's again, he just doesn't take it out of context, right? Like, he knows that no one's attacking his woman's for her body. That's what IP said. I mean, I don't understand what.
Well, I mean, I think he actually has a fair point here, which is that, just because life begins at conception does not necessarily mean, and a lot of people who are trying to oppose abortion are trying to save living fetuses, living babies from getting killed. Doesn't mean necessarily that there aren't those people out there who are against abortion solely for the sake of essentially controlling whether or not someone can have unprotected sex. So there may be people out there who are actually I can't really think of anyone who would rationally think this way off the top of my head, but at the same time I can't think of anyone who would rationally just want babies to be killed off the top of my head, really, other than people who are just like complete hedonists.
Yeah.
But with that said, there might be people out there who are who literally don't care about the fetus and just want to stick people with a baby, and even think of it as punishment. Though that the thinking of having a baby as punishment thing is sort of one of those things where I think it's almost like that's playing into their rhetoric, because that's the way the left thinks instead.
Yeah, it's a fallacy called bulverism, where you speculate about someone's ulterior motives. And like, let's think what we said before, where we said, oh well, people only embrace moral relativism so they can live a hedonistic lifestyle or something. So we could, if we were to use that as a pretext for dismissing materialism or
moral relativism, yeah,
that would be wrong.
Exactly.
But all my life, when I was growing up, that's all I heard. I'm sorry. Is pro-lifers only want to control women's bodies just for the sake of control. Like there was no rational reason. They're just pro-lifers want to control for the sake of control, and that was used to dismiss the entire pro-life movement. Now that poisonous idea seems to have swallowed the whole of liberalism, including atheism. Now bulverism arguments are just considered accepted. So yes.
Right. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, there are some people who are saying that pro-life only wants to attack the woman's body, but no, pro-life only wants to protect the baby inside. All right, that's what IP's been trying to say here. And yeah. So let's continue on.
Is not her body. It is a new human with its own body currently developing, just like a 3-month-old is and a 3-year-old is.
No, not just like a 3-month-old or a 3-year-old is. There's at least one important difference, that being that a 3-month-old or 3-year-old doesn't have to push its way through anyone's birth canal against their will in order to continue their existence.
Until the
That has literally nothing to do with whether or not a fetus is part of a woman's body. So it's like, yeah, sure, the fetus has to push its way out, but what does it matter by location? No, I understand what he's trying to do, but it's not really working.
Can I bring up a little example if I don't choke to death here before I can get it all out?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. But so what TMM is saying here and what pro-choicers tend to say in general is that the right to bodily autonomy is absolute, except if you're a fetus. But we won't even touch that. So the right to bodily autonomy is absolute, even if it causes the fetus pain, even if it is the taking of the human life. That doesn't matter because the woman's right, at least, to bodily autonomy is absolute. Now, I'm going to go completely off the wall here, but do you guys remember a news item from several years ago? There was a cruise ship off the coast of Italy called the Costa Concordia, and it sank. Now, the captain did everything he could do to save his own life and did nothing to protect the passengers. He was eventually brought to trial because he was responsible for all those other passengers. So his right to bodily autonomy was not absolute because he had to put his own life at risk to save everyone else. So if we could point to a case like that where a person's right to bodily autonomy is not absolute, why should we extend it to a woman carrying a fetus?
Yeah, that's a good point. And then the other part I'd like to critique is this sort of notion of rights without a sort of law, which is that what rights are is they are fundamentally edicts which say that someone would have to be allowed to do such and such a thing, and if someone else tries to prevent that person from doing such and such a thing, that person will be punished, right? So we have our Bill of Rights in the Declaration of Independence, and the way things are supposed to work anyways, which we've been seeing that they aren't exactly working that way, is that if, say, our Fifth Amendment rights or our Fourth Amendment rights are violated, if our rights are violated, let's say that we're being spied on and that evidence is being used, that's obtained illegally, is being used basically to hunt us down and then capture us, throw us in prison or whatever, without our consent, or just all that information is being obtained from us. Well, what's supposed to happen is that there's supposed to be oversight above the government, such that the people who are doing this get in trouble with that, right? So rights are actually a sort of legal construct which requires that there is a judiciary body and something out there to enforce that law. So when we hear about abortion rights, what we are hearing about is sort of right to a woman's right to bodily autonomy or whatever. But we're actually hearing, unless they're giving a descriptive argument about what the current status of the law is, unless they're saying that and saying that alone and not trying to say anything at all about ethics, which that they are not.
Yeah.
We know not just doing that. Then what they are doing is they're actually implicitly assuming a sort of theistic framework in which there's God or the gods or something out there that's basically watching, and if someone
The
goes
trouble
in
is
and
that many of them have a very
they screw it up.
positivistic view of
the thing is
legal positivism.
Well, the thing is, here's the thing though, is that this idea of rights that they're using is actually just wrong. It's not. It doesn't at all fit the definition. It's basically just asserting that we feel we would like people to be able to have this bodily autonomy absolutely. That's really what they're asserting. It's really just their emotivistic grunts, because you can't have rights in this sort of in this sort of atheistic view. You just can't. It's impossible.
Well, there's a constant kind of equivocation fallacy between rights as they are codified by man and rights as the thing those codified laws describe. Just like we talk about the laws of physics, things in the universe do not move around because the mathematician scribbled some equations or something. We have the separation that there is the codified law and there is the thing that the law describes. And it's the source of no end of confusion, especially for atheists, especially for materialists. But without the kind of transcendent right that the codified right, that the right that is written by man describes, then a right is simply another arbitrary edict of the state, and no one can consistently believe that a right is simply an arbitrary construct of the state.
Right. Well, they can. However, when that happens, the mask comes off and it becomes obvious what's going on. Like, they'll say that it's because we as a society, the rights come from society, and we as a society decided this, and like, yeah, you just made this up and you impose this. This is the mother imposing on the baby. This is and you imposing on the rest of us. Stop it.
Yes.
There's no basis for this at all. It's naked force. And at that point, it becomes once the smoke screen on that has been blown away, then that's how you get big political movements that like the type that elected Donald Trump in there. Let's go in and steamroll the left because they have no the emperor is naked now. Everyone sees it, and the justification. It's all everyone sees what it's just a naked power play.
Yeah,
and then after that, it's just a matter of who can seize the power.
But the thing is that especially for the pro-choice movement, they think they can cow their opponents with rhetoric.
They can't though, because they were able to do it in political correctness.
We'll be so terrified of incurring their wrath that we will keep our thinking in this little.
No, that's where you just go in there and you have to offend these people and make like what Trump was doing. In a way, he just comes in and just steamrolls these people, and then when basically they complain about it, you basically give them two middle fingers to a cheering crowd.
That's kind of off topic, but I like when an atheist says, "Oh, well, is your fear of hell the only thing that's going to prevent you from murdering someone?" You could just tell them, "So what if it is?"
Because, apparently with you, their lack of a fear in hell is causing them to murder people and trying to justify it with a bunch of BS.
So that's just throw that Molotov cocktail in there,
Oh yeah, they need more of that. This is what really frustrates me about the conservative movement, and unfortunately, I'm kind of like iffy about if Trump is really pro-life or not. But he's better than Hillary, obviously, or was. But the thing with this is what really bugged me for the longest time is the conservative movement they weren't reactionary enough. They were too nicey. They would always cow to political correctness as such, and because they could get pushed around constantly, and they would never win because they were too nice and quote unquote Christian and so on. And you can't win if you're constantly cowed by political correctness.
Yeah.
You have to be able to bulldoze. Okay. If you especially if you're dealing with the left, because the left, once you take all the smoke screens off, all they have is moral subjectivism combined with power politics. That's all it is power politics. That's the only thing they have going. we have the more voters, so therefore we're going to allow abortion so people can get kill their kids. Well, why not just, if that's the case, if that's all that really is, if that's all politics really is, why not just seize the, you know, the means of political force and start dangling leftists from helicopters?
Well, I love the way that you sort of took the seize the means of idea from like Marx and basically.
I know. Seize the means of political authority.
Let's see. Let's get on to the video.
The ontological means of production, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of you made a lot of good points here.
Abortion crowd can provide any scientific evidence that a fetus is part of the woman's body. They cannot say the pro-life movement is an attack on a woman's use of her body.
IP says that the fetus is not the woman's body, as though it has nothing to do with her body and places no burden on it whatsoever. The mere fact that the survival
like, this is not what he said. He said it's not a part of the woman's body. It's not saying that it has nothing to do with the woman's body, but it's just saying that the fetus is not a part of the woman's body. So logically, it's not. You're not talking about controlling the woman, preventing her from her own bodily autonomy over her own body parts. You're talking about stopping the woman from killing another being that is living in her body, and that's the difference. But here we go with the straw man.
Yep, this is what he does.
A woman to endure the birthing process makes her pregnancy a bodily autonomy issue.
Now, it may affect her body, but that doesn't mean scientifically that the fetus is a part of her body. Okay, that's not true. Like, that's. And here's
not a bodily autonomy issue because the fetus is part of the woman's body. It's a bodily autonomy issue because of the effects the fetus has on the woman's body. If someone believes that a woman ought to be forced to give birth against her will, I would consider that to be an attack on her bodily autonomy. Call me crazy.
Actually,
okay, here's a fair point there. But I would say that the bodily autonomy issue is secondary in this case to, or at least on the pro-life side, it's secondary to the issue of a woman killing another human being.
Well, I know, and he says that the autonomy body issue is because the fetus is part of the woman's body. First of all, no, it's not. That's so stupid. That's just scientifically inaccurate. I mean,
well, yeah, he actually backed off of that in his second slide there, and then said that it's not because the fetus is part of the body, but it's because the fetus has an impact on the body of the mother, and if then he goes on to say that he doesn't like the idea of a woman being forced to give birth to a baby. That sort of stuff.
Well, so because the fetus is dependent on it. I mean, there's people depend on life support. I mean. Yeah. I mean, this is just a complete BS. You know what? Here's the thing. If Messianic Maniac ever finds this video, I want him to show an evidence, some kind of scientific paper, anything to show that the fetus is the woman's body. Any scientific evidence whatsoever. Let's see if he can find it. Because so far, he hasn't showed any scientific evidence whatsoever.
Yeah, and can we just admit that this whole thing, that bodily autonomy is some principle that rules supreme over everything else, is just something they pulled out of their asses?
Oh yeah,
where did this idea come?
Yeah, we don't even need to well, I guess we probably do now to address that, but
I did a whole video debunking that. The whole notion, that whole bodily autonomy argument, I did a whole video debunking that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Well, the thing is, this is like a symptom. This is a symptom of the problem I was mentioning earlier. This whole problem where we don't know about ethics, we don't know how to derive ethics. A lot of us don't even know what the word good means enough to answer G. Moore's open question dilemma in a satisfactory way that that meets the criteria. And so because of that, because a lot of people just don't understand ethics, we have this problem where whatever a group says, if they can make it popular enough, that's what people will believe, because they just don't know anything about ethics.
Yeah, I know. At the end of when he says, "Call me crazy," I was thinking, yeah, I would call you crazy over that. You're insane. You should be called the Messianic Maniac. Maniac just...
Yeah.
mean,
this is the thing. I honestly, and you can disparage me for this all you want. I've kind of always had a Rousseauian view of human rights, that we have the rights that we have in a state of nature, and all sorts of modern artifices kind of take away from that. But yeah, women giving birth to children was the way it worked for hundreds of thousands of years. It was white male imperialist colonialist technology that kind of changed that scenario, and that's where they think their rights come from.
yeah. Here, let's continue on here.
What if this innocent child developing is a woman as well? Doesn't she have a right to her body? Supposing we go off this unfounded principle that the fetus is the mother's body, aren't there also situations in which even abortion advocates themselves would say it is immoral to have an abortion? For instance, what if a fanatic mother prefers to have an abortion just because the fetus will grow up to be a girl? What if in the future it could be determined in the womb whether someone will grow up to be gay or straight? Wouldn't abortion advocates say that in those situations it is immoral for the mother to kill the gay fetus just because the mother doesn't want to have a child that's gay? We would view such a practice as unjust, immoral, and cruel. But why? Does this mean the fetus has rights in those circumstances which supersede the rights of the mother?
No, I would consider sex-selective abortion to be immoral, but would the fact that the person who wants the abortion has immoral motivations justify forcing her to give birth against her will? In my opinion, no. Forcing her to give birth against her will is even more morally reprehensible than sex-selective abortion.
Shouldn't we?
That's just
Wow.
ridiculous.
So he just came out and
Yeah.
he essentially is arguing from a moral realist standpoint now. So now we're seeing the switcheroo, which is sort of I want to just hold this sort of subjective morality view, and then now all of a sudden I want to be able to claim things are morally reprehensible.
Yeah.
And we see this a lot. Yeah.
It-
Yeah,
it-
we see this a lot. with
Well,
women
relative
against
to
women.
my point of view, abortion is worse.
it's not immoral, but only if you do it for the right reasons. Yeah. It also kind of reminds me of the thing where a man might be guilty of battery against a woman, and if she miscarries, then he's guilty of murder. Whereas if she aborts it, then there is no murder. But yeah.
All right. Yeah. Let's go on.
Guys, that all fetuses per se have some intrinsic worth?
I think we should place some value on fetuses, yes, but I don't value any fetus so much that I think its preservation justifies forcing anyone to give birth against their will.
Okay, so that basically tells us what he means about his valuation of human life. His valuation of human life is such that, it's fine to kill somebody, in order to prevent. It's perfectly fine to kill somebody in order to prevent someone else from having to give birth against their will. And there's the whole thing about adoption and all of that. And to be honest, it doesn't look like it would even change his mind if there was perfect adoption. There was a perfect adoption system that the babies would be absolutely guaranteed to be raised by responsible parents if they weren't aborted. It wouldn't change his mind on this whole thing of aborting babies, because he thinks of childbirth apparently as being so painful or bad that it's worse than the dismemberment and death of a human being.
I wonder if at the bottom of it all, it's just this notion of rights being motivated by a sort of pragmatic. Let's say that we had a device that could teleport the fetus out of a woman and into a kind of incubation chamber, so that we could do it. So it's not necessary to terminate the fetus to do so. I wonder if then, just as a matter of pragmatics, you would say, yeah, the fetus has a right to life.
Some would say so, but then there is these stupid feminist philosophers that actually have gone to that point, and they said even if artificial wombs are created, they should still kill it because it's economic burden on the mother or something like that. And
oh wait, even if you're talking about
it's totally screwed up. They have this notion, it's almost like this, they're trying to read this sort of matter, the whole notion of a paterfamilias in Rome. The head of the house could kill anyone underneath. It's like the same thing applied to mothers, like a mater familias. You know?
matter familia.
It's essentially what they were arguing for. I mean, I don't know how the heck they were doing this, but these feminist philosophers were running this argument for essentially a mater familias. Is, you know, the mother should be allowed to kill the kid because.
Johanan, do you mean to tell me that feminist philosophers said something that was crazy?
You know what's a shame? Now, of course, you know, Messianic Manic hasn't really gotten into this, but there are a lot of atheists right now that just hate feminism. Like, you see it, like, I'm just kind of like complaining about this because I kind of, you know, enjoyed back when they used to have, you know, atheists versus theists, and that's, I mean, it's still going on to a degree, but it's dried up. And if you go to like Thunderfoot's channel or the Amazing Atheist channel, all they do are talk about feminism and social justice warrior stuff.
Yeah, that's their next target, basically.
I mean, literally, that's all they do. I mean, I don't mind that. That's great and all that they do that, but like, it's kind of, you know, like, oh man, we lost. But the other thing about this is if they're going to target feminism, why don't some of them go after abortion?
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
I saw Sargon
yeah,
of Akkad kind of do that a little bit.
This is kind of, I've had this discussion before, and I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm not going to really commit to anything, but I think it is kind of what I call like the kind of man show anti-feminism, where you have these basically man children, and they live in their little man boy worlds with their video games, and they're very happy in their little worlds, and they don't like anything that makes an imposition from outside. So they'll go along with feminist principles as long as it makes no demands of them. So they'll say, oh, well, yeah, a woman has the right to abortion, sure, whatever, that works for me. But as soon as they start limiting their expression, then it becomes a problem. So I think it's more motivated by kind of indolence and laziness and just this kind of entitlement sensibility for many anti-feminists.
Yeah, I know, but
sure, I know, but the thing about some of this is, you know, there's the whole, you know, penis head motivation for some of these people, right?
Yeah.
But what's really interesting, I mean, a lot of these same people though are not even having sex. Like the MGTOW, you know, you've heard of the so-called sexodus, right? Millennials just not having sex, and it's partly because of the feminism thing, and it's partly because of the, you know, they're too lazy. They're just like, oh, let's just look at pornography and jack off and play computer games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're too lazy to even have, you know, to like find a girl and so on. If that's the case, and if that's the way most of these atheists are, or many of them are, what do they even have to lose by opposing abortion anymore? Even if that's their motivation, they're not going to do that anyway. Why would they want to oppose? I mean, there's no
because it would involve caring about something beyond themselves.
Right, but what I'm getting at is, I mean, already, you know, they like bashing feminism for the fun of it, right? I mean, feminism does need to be bashed, but like, I mean, I'm seriously saying this because I'm starting to think that it's possible you can get some of these MGTOW / sexist sorts of people that also have to be atheists and just convert them to the pro-life side, because, you know, as long as I'm guessing the reason TMM is holding to these ridiculous views, and if you look at his value system, it doesn't even seem like his values would internally hold up. The example I gave with him being, you know, postnatally aborted for the sake of keeping abortion legal.
That's the thing. You're not going to have any luck with that because you're up against a worldview that is motivated by.
Right. But what I'm saying is a lot of them are too lazy to even think like that. So what I'm getting at is you could have. I mean, in the Messianic Manic's case, I suspect it's because he has the penis head motivation. Okay. But what I'm saying is, I'm guessing we can nick off a chunk of the atheists that are, you know, in the sexodus / MGTOW crowd, and some of them even, you know, kind of. Like, I think Sargon of Akkad is sort of in the alt-right. Is he even an atheist? I think he's an atheist, but
most definitely, me and Escaping Atheism have discussed that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. He's not like the normal. He's actually right of center, from what I understand, and he's kind of in the alt-right crowd. I'm guessing you can get some of those people, and he's been on record saying that abortion it's something that should be shamed.
Christopher Hitchens has some.
Oh, I know. I've seen that too. But what I'm getting at is that some of these people, especially with the whole sexodus MGTOW crowd, you can pull some of them off, and I'm guessing you can make some.
They're pulling themselves off, yeah.
Yeah, well, they could be potentially converted to the pro-life side because they don't have the motivation. They wouldn't even have the kind of motivation that I suspect someone like TMM has.
Okay, good to know. Let's continue on here.
Of course, when you bring this scientific evidence up to people who are okay with the murder of a child, they will ignore it and appeal to philosophy. Now, where have I seen this tactic before of ignoring science and appealing to philosophy?
So every time someone points out that a question is a philosophical one rather than a scientific one, they're no better than creationists? Do you...
Now, I want to stop this right here. No, that's not what he's saying at all. I mean, now, what pro-abortion and creationists do the same thing. They both reject science in, of ad hoc definitions of what they think is right. That's what he's trying to go for. And here, let's continue on here.
I believe there is no circumstance in which it is legitimate to judge an issue to be philosophical rather than scientific. The question of what constitutes murder is a moral question, and morality is not a fucking science. Science can provide useful information to those considering moral questions, but it cannot ultimately decide them.
All right. Go ahead. Did I cut someone off?
No, we're here.
Yeah, like we're good.
Right. Now listen. IP never said it was a question of science. IP was saying that it's a question of science when it comes to the position when life begins. And then since we know that life begins at conception by the basic ideas of human understanding of morality, we don't have a right to murder an innocent life. I mean, so he's basically taking him out of context, and he's just lying at this point.
Yeah, right now he's just trying to like use the whole. See, like, what IP was getting at was that the way that this often works is that your pro-abortion people will manipulate language and try to basically say, oh well, it's not a human being at that point, or it's not a person or whatever, and then therefore you can just kill it. And then, TMM is interjecting here, basically pretending that's not what happens.
Yeah, he just twists everything around. I swear, Messianic Manic, his tongue is so twisted he can open a wine bottle. He just with that.
Oh yeah, it's just. I mean, one time he tries to like translate my idealism into solipsism. That was ridiculous. Like, I mean, seriously, like, what's funny about that is Hoffman's model is essentially, I mean, I adopt objective idealism, which is essentially the philosophic, version of Hoffman's model. Hoffman's model uses multiple conscious agents. It's like it's not. Yes, solipsism is a form of idealism, but that doesn't mean all idealism is solipsism. And it's just such a stupid straw man.
It's like eliminative materialism is a form of realism, but that doesn't mean that all forms of realism are eliminative materialism.
By the way, that reminds me of another error. I felt so ridiculous I even needed to point this out, but this was in one of my videos, is I was talking about God as a cause, and then he starts talking about the 4 fundamental forces. And then I said, no, I'm not saying God is a fundamental force. It's well, fundamental forces are causes. I'm like, well, even if you grant that, that does not mean that God is a fundamental force. This guy has serious problems with just Boolean logic,
Well, the thing about it is I think he's just. I get the impression some of these times that he's gotten to the point where he's just like manipulating stuff to like it's not even coherent philosophy.
Manipulating language.
Yeah, to make
that would be more accurate to say he's making it up as he goes.
Which makes me wonder if this is really just like politically motivated.
Yeah,
to attack because he doesn't like the political effects theism has on a society, and like it's.
I mean, have you looked at his Patreons? I mean, he churns the shit out, but he's getting paid for it, so it doesn't really matter. Just
there's that aspect too.
Yeah.
Well, of course, every atheist on the planet's funding him. I mean,
yeah.
Have you seen Aaron Ross?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Have you seen Aaron Ross' Patreon?
Yes, I actually have.
That is ridiculous. That is just ridiculous.
Well, he's big in Texas, from what I hear.
I know, but it's still ridiculous. Like he like.
You've seen Matt Dead.
Who are these clowns?
Matt Dillahunty.
Yeah, like that guy. I think I saw his Patreon one time. His was really high too. But yeah.
I didn't know Matt Dillahunty was on YouTube.
No, he's not. Well, he does like debates. There's some YouTube uploaded like that, but I think he has a Patreon. I could be mistaken. But yeah, it amazes me when I see this. I'm surprised no one else sees this. It just makes you think there's just a bunch of dumb sheep that follow Messianic Manic, really, or people who think just like him, and then that's the only conclusion I could come to. But yeah, here, let's continue.
Won't work here as well.
Non-fucking sequitur. Most young Earth theories make no assertions about morality at all.
Now, see, he's taking him out of context again. He's not. IP's not arguing that it's making theories. The IP is trying to say that the pro-abortion and the young Earth creationism make the same thing. They make ad hoc definitions of what they think is true, and they'll reject science. And again, he just twists it around again. Like, yeah. Go ahead, John.
I think I keep going with the video.
All right, then, yeah, just.
They try to say, well, a fetus is not a person. The genetic existence of a human may begin at conception, but it is not a person yet. But to do this would just be to make up an ad hoc definition.
Since it is the case that most of us would consider the arbitrary killing of a self-aware non-human to be murder, it is clear that defining murder only as the killing of an innocent human is not adequate. It's obviously not that simple. We need to distinguish between personhood and humanity in order to deal with this problem. That's why this definition is not ad hoc. It is not arbitrary. It is not because we say so, it's because your definition of murder doesn't fucking work.
Wait, so now he's okay. Let's just go back. Want to go to Google? Just look up the Google like right quick of murder. Okay, it says.
Me? Do I look up Google?
Well, yeah, I'd like you to just post it so that everyone can see it though. It's like what I'm seeing is it's saying murder, noun. Google's definition: the unlawful premeditated killing of one human being by another. There we go. Case closed.
Yeah.
One human being, a fetus is a human being, and abortion means that you're killing a fetus, and often you premeditate it. And so like the only case right now is that it's lawful right now, so it's technically not murder by being lawful, but before the laws changed that way, it was unlawful. So before then, it was murder. If we want to go by that definition.
Well, again, IP's point is simple. We show that it has a human life. All right, it's the human life starts at conception. Right, it has the ability to become an actual person. All right, and there actually has been scientific studies to show that it actually does develop consciousness, like around week 12, around that time. I was actually, when I first saw this video like months ago, I was kind of skeptical, but there's just so much so much put into it. So, here's the problem with Messianic Manic. Every time they define, an ad hoc definition of what murder is, it's just based on his own opinion. It's not actual science or fact. It's not. And then he'll use saying, well, you can't use science or facts, for, morality. And he'll use that bait and switch, basically. He'll switch something around. He creates a straw man. Anyways, let's continue on here.
Philosophical view can lead to very devastating consequences.
You are explicitly making an argument ad consequentium here.
What?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I didn't have anything to say, but yeah,
Oh, you didn't? Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to continue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's open a history book and see what happened the last time a group of people decided another group of people were not actually people and not worthy of life and liberty.
Defining personhood as self-awareness would not lead to anyone being denied any rights that they have the capacity to value. Also, the concept of personhood, while excluding some humans, could include entities other than humans. If IP believes that rights are contingent upon merely membership in the human species, then on what moral ground could IP say that it is wrong to enslave an intelligent extraterrestrial?
All right.
Now,
I kind of actually addressed this indirectly beforehand when I brought up the whole Vulcan and Wookiee situation, right? It's not that it's self-aware, but it's not that it's not just the self-awareness itself. It's that there is it's not belonging just to the human species either. It's the fact that the entity involved has a identity whose essence is to be a rational agent, even if that essence is not fully activated yet.
Yeah, and IP never said
It's
that.
part of the essential nature of a human, a Vulcan, and a Wookiee to be a rational agent, even if it could be a Vulcan fetus or, you know, a Wookiee fetus or something, right? In fact, even on Star Trek, they had a scenario where there was Deanna Troi, who's not, you know, she's like half Betazoid, right? And she was
Magically, yeah.
What?
Never mind. I'm making fun.
Yeah, she was impregnated by some weird non-corporeal entity on the ship, and so basically it was guess all her DNA. But so that would be a good example. And then they brought up abortion in the episode, and she's like, "I'm having this baby," and so on. And perfect example. There's an alien baby there, you know, and we're not aborting the baby because you can tell. I mean, the whole thing with Star Trek kind of makes it simpler because it's very obvious that, you know, there's these aliens there, but they're human in their nature, right? Maybe they're a little bit different or something in their personality and some of their cultures, but there's an essential aspect of them that it's the same thing that we would identify as personhood in a human being is identified in them. And so by that logic, it would be just the most obvious intuitive thing in the world that you should not be aborting, you know, baby aliens in Star Trek, you know, because they have that innate nature, or it's part of their innate essence to be a rational agent, even if that rational agency is not something that is active yet.
I think I understand what you're saying, but you know, I would actually look into it to see, you know, which of course, you know, which is pretty much what you said. It makes true. But I think if there was like extraterrestrial aliens, I think we'd have to look into their own life having begun at conception and see if it's going to be like, what is it going to be like, something different, or, you know,
it's going to have some kind of clear demarcation where there's the beginning of a new organism, you know.
Well, that's
yes,
and the virtue of that view is that it is non-arbitrary. It's not saying like oh, it's murder if it happens after 10 weeks or something. It's non-arbitrary.
Yeah, let's continue on here.
That it would be wrong to enslave an alien, then he clearly understands that rights are granted for reasons other than merely being human. Bestowing legal recognition of personhood at birth provides a clear and consistent standard without morally or legally obligating anyone to give birth against their will. Forcing someone to endure that for the sake of the tiny cluster of cells that make up a zygote is not something my conscience can tolerate.
Again, with his consciousness, not based on science, right?
The thing about that is that, you know, what's kind of stupid about this, and I've seen pro-aborts do this all the time, and it really infuriates me. Well, firstly, you can make the Boethian argument that the zygote is a person, okay? Right? I mean, that's just, you know, even Hassan, who is an atheist, makes that point. But the thing about this is that abortions aren't even done that early. So they're playing an emotional appeal. They're doing is, you know, if you look at the kind of development stages that abortions occur at, they're clearly like what you would think of as persons, or, you know, you identify them as a human being with a face, fingerprints, the heartbeat, etc. Right?
Oh yeah, when they fully develop those later on, yeah, like
even in the first, second trimester, you know, they're developed enough that you can see there is a person there, you know.
Yeah.
When you have abortions, though, surgical abortions are not done until after the 6th week. And by that time, it's developed enough that you can see it looks like a person. So now he's playing this kind of counter, like it's an upside down appeal to emotion, as it were. Like he's taking out like the obvious. He's trying to make it like almost like it's an appeal to dehumanization, right?
Right. You know, and
even if I were to grant that you could divide personhood up like that, right? Even if you're going to do that and say, okay, the zygote's not a person, the fetus is, etc. You can't really do that. But even if you were to do that, it's very clear that what's being aborted is not a, quote, clump of cells. It doesn't even have any bearing or appearance to a clump of cells. And they're only using that. They're using that extreme case because they like to, it's a way to grab emotional appeal to their audience, to make it sound like the pro-life view is ridiculous when, you know, frankly, any of the personhood models will have, quote unquote, extremum points, okay? You know, bite the bullet points.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, and the zygote it's a person, but I will also admit that is the bullet point of the pro-life or Boethian model of personhood. Okay. But if you look at their bite the bullet points, they're even more ridiculous. Okay, you end up with either it's arbitrary, like it's defined by legalistic positive, which is ridiculous, or it's imprecise, where it's like this kind of fading into personhood, like it's like, and you end up, you go down that approach, you end up with even more insane nonsense, like, you know, Peter Singer is a good example of someone who argues for the fading into personhood concept. And he's gone off complete Looney Tunes where he's in favor of, you know, giving animal rights while at the same time endorsing infanticide on grounds of, you know, well, abortion is okay, and the reason it's okay is because they're not really persons yet, because they're not intelligent yet, and it fades into that. And since foreign children are you know, not really intelligent, then we can abort them up to like 18 months later or something, like, you know, post-birth, like
children they're not fully self-aware until they're like 3 years old or something.
And so therefore they say that infanticide is okay on literally the fade into, so you end up with this ridiculous illegal positivism thing, which is, you know, just a naked power play shell game.
Yeah.
Or you end up with this really absurd Peter Singer-esque wacko land where it's, you know, infanticide is okay.
Yeah, you know, listen, IP never even said that rights are granted for merely being human. That's just something that is made up.
Given those two alternatives, though, the notion of, you know, yes, it is a little strange to be calling. I mean, on the one side, it's not strange because it just makes logical sense if you realize that, you know, it has a, you know, an essential nature of a human being, which is, you know, therefore it is a human being, therefore it's a person, because the essential nature is to be rational and so on. But it does look a little weird when you know, say, like, you know, you go to the very extreme example of the single cell, you know, the egg, the sperm and the egg. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, biologically, it doesn't look any different than a protozoan, right? Yes, I will admit that seems a little weird to say that's a person, but it's not like, it's not so weird as to be philosophically problematic, you know. In all of the models, the two pro-choice ones, the legal positivism and the Peter Singer kind of approach, those have problems, and this is quote unquote our bite the bullet point, okay? But the point is if you look at all the bite the bullet points, the notion of having the zygote being a person is a less bad bite the bullet point than the pro-choice models.
Right.
That's all there's to it. I mean, it's not yeah, it's a little weird, but let's face it, the pro-choice personhood models are far worse in terms of their ridiculousness when it comes to their bite the bullet points.
Right. I actually want to go back to our Messianic Mac was saying that defining personhood as self-awareness would not lead to anyone being denied of any right that they would have. But here's the thing. I want to ask, like, where did IP say that define, you know, personhood would, self-awareness would lead to that, would lead to slavery or something like that? IP never said this. And, you know, he said very specifically that the idea of an ad hoc definition of defining personhood of how you see fit can lead to devastating consequences. So you can just define personhood by self-awareness. Someone else can define personhood by however they see fit, by skin color, wherever they are, where, you know, and it leads down to the same path. And we're doing the same thing again with the zygote. You know, right. You know, yeah, so let's continue on here.
Say because the fetus is not conscious yet. It is not a person. And how do they know this? Because they do not have the experience or knowledge of you or me? Lack of knowledge doesn't mean someone is not a person. People in vegetative states have very low IQs, and no one says they are not persons.
The reason we don't treat people in temporary states of unconsciousness, like a coma, as though they have no rights is because this would exacerbate the fear most of us have of ending up in such a state. In other words, it would increase the suffering of those of us who are still conscious. It is for this reason that people who are temporarily unconscious ought to still be treated as persons. Abortion does not have the same ability to disturb our peace of mind because none of us has to worry about ending up as a fetus, and fetuses have no capacity to understand or fear their own mortality.
He's admitting it right here. He's admitting it. Since he got out of the gate safe and sound, he has nothing to fear from saying, yes, we can take the life of a fetus. He's basically admitting it right there. Yeah, we're out of the gate.
Yeah, now thinking doesn't make you a person because there are people in comas, in deep sleep or vegetation states. None of these people are actually thinking. And here's another thing, your feelings shouldn't determine someone else's.
I think he might change his mind if Donald Trump decided to legalize post-birth abortions.
Yes.
Post-birth abortion helicopter ride service.
Right, and for him saying that the fetus doesn't experience fear. Now, this is false. We have studies that show that fetus do experience fear and pain. Just because we may end up in a coma, that doesn't determine personhood. Our precious little feelings do not determine whether something lives or dies, or whether something's a person or not. Your opinion, your feelings should not determine if someone else lives or dies. And if someone's in a coma, what if everyone thought, okay, he's not a person anymore, he should just die? It just changed like that. I mean, is that how it's gonna work? Because this is just some bullshit right here.
Yeah, and it so disturbs us, the process of the prospect of someone pulling our plug if we're in a coma, that alone is a pretext for granting us personhood. It's a complete hedonic calculus argument. It's it's just to maximize our pleasure in our waking conscious state. That's the ultimate determinant of rights and values.
It's totally stupid. It's just
yeah.
It's much harder to define, and we have good evidence it is fundamental and not a later developed process.
How can you give good evidence regarding something you have trouble even defining?
Okay, he didn't have a hard time to define it at all. He defined it as something that's fundamental and something that we can actually study based on his videos. So once again, Messianic Manic just lied 2 seconds just into the video we just saw right now. Again, it's... the more I watch this, it's just so unbelievable. It almost hurts my head watching this right now. I'm sorry, I have to say that. It's just, yeah.
He's just tossing out random crap that's going to confirm the prejudices of people who have already made up their mind. That's it.
Now, I want to show something interesting. This is going to totally, if the Messianic Manic is watching this, or he's alerted this, is going to totally piss him off. But about this, what you just said about him having his confirmation bias, I've noticed this for a while. You know where his subscriber count is at right now?
What's ridiculous, yeah.
Well, it's ridiculous. However, there's something else about it I thought was funny, okay?
Yeah.
It's at 33,654 subscribers right now. IP passed that. IP was at 29, 28,000. Guess where the Messianic Manic subscriber count was about when that happened? IP has almost picked up 10,000 subscribers, okay, since before I saw there. The Messianic Manic in that same time period was at about 33,200 subscribers. He's essentially in an echo chamber. He's not growing anywhere. He's stuck. He's stuck at the 33,000 mark.
Yeah.
And IP is blowing away, and that's what he's doing. That's what happens when you talk to an echo chamber and just reconfirm the same. You don't grow past the echo. He's stuck at literally at 33,000 subscribers.
We will pay you money to feed our opinions back to us. Yes.
Yeah, that's all that happens.
Yeah.
Let's suppose we define a person to be someone who is capable of intentional action. Well, guess what? Science is not on the side of abortion advocates in this case either. Even though consciousness in fetuses is very hard to study, by 14 weeks of age, there is undeniable evidence that fetuses display intentions, and by definition, would be persons.
Who uses that definition, though? I don't. By that definition, many non-human animals would be persons. Mice would be persons. I don't think it's enough that the organism be conscious. I think personhood should be contingent upon having a self-concept, rather than merely being conscious. Also, by the definition IP is addressing, an embryo without a nervous system would still not be a person. None of these assertions about the consciousness of the fetus explain why it is wrong to kill a zygote that doesn't even have a nervous system yet.
As we've already established, the born human being does not have a self-image until they're a few years old. So
yeah, that means basically that by his idea, then the whole idea of killing
Infanticide.
after they're born. Yeah, straight up infanticide would be justified on his view.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much wrong in what he just said. I mean, first of all, personhood is about being human life, but IP addresses that there's good evidence to show that consciousness is not created from the brain activity, and that's shown in Case of the Soul and Case for the, Case for the Soul series he actually posted on here, and it's not dependent on the nervous system. In IP's video, near-death experience, he gave examples of people who were born without brains or just a sack of fluid and a very thin layer of brain tissue. Who is that one person, Johan? Do you know who I'm talking about?
Not offhand. Say that again. Who's born with what?
It was a person who had a case that was born with a sack of fluid or very thin layer of brain tissue. And
I'm not sure of the name of that person, but I do remember there was.
I remember that. Yeah. I don't know who it was.
Yeah, I mean, there was a case for that. Didn't have a nervous system, but it could still function and walk just like a human.
Oh yeah, there was even a person who had an IQ over 120, who had just no actual brain, just the thin layer of brain cells. Well, not brain cells, but nerve cells coating the inside of his skull, but no actual brain. But yeah,
I know. That doesn't mean that they're not a person just because they don't have a fully developed brain. I mean, it's been shown. There's so much evidence on this. Know this: Messianic Man gave not one scientific paper or any evidence at all. All of it came from his opinion, and which I think everyone needs to know about this. Messianic Man doesn't argue, from science. He argues from what he wants to believe, which is a fairyland.
By the way, I just pulled this up from Psychology Today. I thought it would be relevant to the argument. But it says self-awareness in the transition from infant to toddler. We suggested that 3 aspects of development are particularly important in helping us understand toddlers. To summarize, at about 18 months, range 1 to 3 years, these 3 issues emerge to herald the arrival of the toddler: mobility, self-awareness, and language. So at least until the toddler is 18 months old, do they have the self-awareness. So it would fail by that metric.
Well, what did you all think?
Painful.
Yeah, this is very much cringe.
Yes.
He's not even trying at this point.
No.
I mean,
I don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me that.
I know completely. Yeah.
Well, that's the fallout, the fallback. It's kind of the agnostic
sounds a
position,
bit
the pseudo skeptic. Just random arbitrary skepticism. And he doesn't have an opinion of his own, and that's his handy fallback.
Yeah, I mean, half the stuff he said, IP never said in the first place. He just made up shit and wasted out context.
Yep.
It's all he ever does, really. Just.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, anything else you want to say and wrap up with this here?
So we will mirror this on all our channels. I think we should give a plug for our channels.
Anyways, thank you for coming. And if Messianic Man wants to make a response, I challenge him to use scientific evidence and research to show that. Give me a paper that says that the fetus is part of the woman's body. Give me a paper that argues against what all of us just say, not just from his opinion. Give us some scientific facts. Would y'all agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyways, Thank you guys for coming. Until next time. See ya.
All right. See ya.
All right, take it easy,
Bye.
guys.